Hello, so this is a little technical lesson on a stay wet palette. A stay wet palette is specifically used for acrylic paints. When I first used acrylic paints years and years ago, I squeezed them out onto like a kitchen plate, like I do watercolours, and on a day like today, which is hot and sunny, they literally dried before I could mix them or use them. And I was like, well, how does this work? And nobody had told me about a stay wet palette. So a stay wet palette is really simple and really easy to use. Now, I don't use an artist's stay wet palette because they're very expensive and you don't need it. What you're doing is you're creating a damp environment for your paints, and that way they stay ready to use. So I just use a box like this that you can buy anywhere. It just needs to be a box with a lid. This one is slightly deeper than this one, and I think the slightly deeper is a little bit better. So I would go for the slightly deeper. And this costs something like £3 or £4. You could use like a Ferrero Rocher chocolate box, but you would of course have to eat the chocolates first, so that's up to you. So just use a plastic box with a lid. How you put it together is you have your plastic box, and then into that you put something that holds water. So just like these kitchen cleaning cloths, I use these ones because they are more eco-friendly and compostable. You then pour quite a lot of water onto the cloths. Now, just like if you're drying washing, the amount of water varies depending on whether it's a damp, rainy day or a hot, dry day. But you'll see that quite a lot of water has gone onto there. It's not pouring, but it's really quite wet. The thing I do use that is an art product is this Stay Wet sheet. They're not particularly cheap. You know, they can, depending on the size, they might be like 50p. But you can't use ordinary paper. The paint will soak into the paper. The Stay Wet paper is resistant, so it works as a surface you can use. Put your Stay Wet sheet onto your damp cloths. Press them down and dampen it, and then turn it over so the top of the sheet is damp as well. Not wet, not running with water, but damp. If you are painting on a hot day, you will need to keep topping up the water in there. And the advantage of this is it's fantastic. It keeps your paints wet, and it keeps them wet to use, and you can even store them. So these are paints that I put together in this palette a couple of weeks ago, and you can see that the paint is still completely usable. If you had that paint exposed to the air, it would just be dry and you've wasted it. And then when you've finished your painting, the great thing to do with your palette and the bits of paint left is to practice some colour mixing with what you've got. Mix some greys and some browns. But you can put this away and it will be fine for a good couple of weeks. If you leave it too much longer than that, it gets really stinky and mouldy and not very nice. But it certainly lasts a good couple of weeks. So you can only use this palette for acrylic paints. It doesn't work for watercolour or oils or anything like that. It works for acrylic paints. You won't look back. Okay, thank you for listening. Bye.